So we asked these guys if they would be willing to share their story with you tonight and how Core Community has impacted their lives. Guys, these guys, you have no idea all the work that goes on behind the scenes. And so when we get to hear your stories and how what we've done has helped you, and it's just a huge boost to us to know that what we're doing really matters and makes a difference. And so you're an inspiration to us, and it's been an honor and a joy to walk alongside you. And so we're gonna have each of you, what I've asked them to do is each of them to just share their story tonight, and then we might have a little bit of time for additional questions, okay? Who would like to go first? Everybody's like, not me. You go first, Sarah?
All right, so my name is Sarah Career, and I have been part of CCA for the last 4 years. None of you guys have really heard my story. I used to be ashamed of my story. I had a lot of guilt and shame. I was afraid of being judged. A few years ago, I realized that my story, even though filled with a lot of wrong decisions, is a testimony and needs to be shared. When I was younger, my parents got a divorce and we moved. I was hurt, mad at the world, and began to rebel. My dad was a single parent and I didn't make things easy for him. I started skipping school, stealing, and hanging with the wrong crowd. That's where my addiction began. Over the years, there were times when I was sober, but the cravings for the drug was so overwhelming that I relapsed over and over throughout my life. In 2012, I was married and had 4 children. While pregnant with our last kid, he had an affair. That's when my life went into a downward spiral. I found comfort in what I knew, my meth addiction. It numbed the pain I was in, and it completely took me from the present. I had lost everything, including myself. When I started with CCA, I was on probation and had a substantial court fee. I just had a newborn and was homeless. I enrolled at the Augusta Learning Center to begin working on my long neglected high school diploma and worked full-time at Brahms. I was emotionally worn out and felt hopeless. I was in a very dark, lonely place with no real hope of ever having a better future. My life began to change when I joined CCA. I moved into an Oxford house in Wichita and working on my recovery as well as improving my life through CCA. I stuck with it, even with all the ups and downs. Even with all the ups and downs while my life continued to improve. What I have found in CCA is a close-knit family. They offer a lot of support, encouragement, guidance, and love. Someone is always there to help brainstorm different ideas for different problems. I've accomplished so much in the last 5 years. I'm off corrections and paid all my fines. I've moved out of Oxford housing into a more stable house I can call home. I have joint custody of my kids and working on shared custody. I have graduated core and earned my high school diploma. I recently just celebrated 5 years of sobriety from all mind-altering substances. I no longer work at Brahms. I now work for ASDAC, and I am the coach for Core Community Augusta. I'm not where I want to be, but looking back, I'm a lot further than I thought I'd ever be.
Hi, I'm Dee Shear. I've been in Core Community for 4 years, something like that. I graduated the first year, but I stuck with it because I like it. I grew up in poverty for a lot of years. My dad has a drug addiction, still has it. Both my brothers also have drug addictions. When I first came to Kansas, it was about 10 years ago. We moved around down here, me and my husband now. We kind of moved around here and there, just down here in Kansas, just in this little area. Between here and Kinsley, Mullinville. And we started coming to this class, and it was actually his boss that told us to come to this class, because we couldn't budget money for nothing for the life of us, because I was never taught, to do any of that kind of stuff. I was not a very nice person when I lived up in Minnesota, because that's where I'm from. But ever since I started coming to Core Community, it's changed my life, my family's life. We're completely out of poverty now, thanks to Core Community. We have 6 kids all together. He has 3, and we have 2 together, and then I have 1 from a previous relationship. I got community coming here. I have a family, even though we have no biological family here in Kansas. We have one through Core Community. And I just got a lot of community. I started a job that I really, really love, and if I didn't come to Core Community, I sure wouldn't have it. So, it changed my life, big time.
My name is Nathan Keith, and what Core means to me is family. When I moved here 8 years ago, October, to be with my girlfriend and her kids, Core Community was the first thing me and her joined. They offered advice and education and instruction on how to live a productive, successful, happy life for me and my family. 6 years later, I lost my girlfriend and my kids almost. They were the person that helped me get my kids and helped us get through that hard time.
Lonely place with no real hope of ever having a better future.
They were there when my family needed them most. I found lifelong friends and family with Core that I highly recommend to anyone to join this program.
Hi, my name is Tam Logan. I'm from Meade, Kansas. 2 years ago, I moved from Washington State to Kansas because my family had moved here, and where does grandma's heart go if the grandchildren go, right? And so, anyway, I moved here. I met Ann Klassen and a few other people through a women's Bible study at our church, and Ann introduced me to Core. And God brought me to Core. And Core has made some humongous changes in my life. I talk to my family about it. I talk to all my food bank people about it. I talk to anybody who will listen about Core because I think it's a very valuable program. They've taught me how to set goals. They've taught me how to set achievable, timely goals, and encouraged me and praised me when I reached them. I graduated this last spring from Core, and now I'm just finding my niche as to where I fit and what I'm going to be doing for many, many years of my life, I pray. And so it's changed that part of me. It's encouraged me. It's carried me through my ups and downs. When I couldn't afford glasses, they helped me out. Like, they really want to help us succeed. And I'm on a fixed income, and I can pay all my bills, so I don't consider myself poor, because a lot of people don't even have a home. A lot of people don't have cars. A lot of people don't have tents. And so I feel so blessed by God. I don't know why he blesses me so much. But anyway, I've met a lot of people through Core. And one thing that has grieved my heart is my grandchildren live in poverty. My son and daughter were raised in my home, and until I was 45 was my dad's last act of violence toward me. And so they saw that trauma, they lived that trauma. I lived in a very horrific home when I was growing up. But I survived that, and God is using that as a way that I can minister to other people, because hurt people are just hurt people. They've just had ups and downs. Poverty comes in all sizes, all shapes. And my prayer is that I can minister to people that need this kind of help. And so that's what I'm doing. And I want to take a second, if I can, and read an essay my granddaughter wrote about if they could go back to one place and time in their life, this is the time she chose. And I think this is very rich coming out of her mouth. Take me back. Take me way back to 10 years old, living in a yellow bricked homeless shelter. It's called Open House Ministries, where there was always a soft electrical hum in the walls. I ran barefoot across the cold concrete floor just so my ears could buzz as loudly. My heart beat wild in my chest. I hastily breathed the smell of earth and cigarettes like it would cleanse me. If I could retrace my steps down the wide hallways, I could return to our door. Take me back to our room, which was so small I could touch the bathroom wall and the kitchen counter at the same time. Strangers whispered to each other in rooms adjacent. We could hear the blur of arguments and the chimes of giggles. We had grown used to the strangers. After all, we wore their clothes and we ate their food. Take me back to the snickering in the corners, picking out names for people who didn't have them, like the toothless Bill, heavy-footed neighbor, tight-lipped counselor. They had no families, no home. Even though they smelt bad, I was always shocked at how normal they were to me. From their shaky hands and warm smiles, I learned that they wanted family also. They wanted whatever name I would give them. For the first time, I wondered why my mother named me the way she did. I wanted you to be strong, my mother replied. I realized that one day my mother's name wasn't Mom. In her name, I found the person that happened to be my parent instead of a parent that happened to be a person. Take me back to that time when I was more afraid of the dark than myself. I would stay up at night silently staring at the complimentary painting on the wall. I watched it reflect small images on our muted TV. The only sound allowed was the shuffle of feet outside, or the soft sobbing of my mother, who had been weighed down by more than her blanket. I'm sorry. Take me back to the early mornings in the shelter, my siblings and I with excitement, building higher and higher and higher as the elevator took us lower and lower. Upon the ding of the elevator door, it allowed us into our first room. Into the first floor. As my mother passed easily by, my brother and sister and I collected around a large plastic bag. Every morning, this magical hidden bag under the office table was filled to the brim with donated donuts. Stacked on top of each other, every shape, every flavor, every form, the donuts sat and waited for our stomachs, which had yet to break the morning fast. I grabbed a long maple donut almost every time. The donuts would be kind of squashed and awkward, looking and having all sorts of different toppings on top and on the bottom, where it sat on top of a different colored tree. I just shrugged it off. I told myself, it has more flavor that way. I learned to think like that, even if I was squashed and awkward looking, even if I wore pants that were too small or shoes that were too big, even if I was too cold for my age or didn't have light up shoes like everybody else, I just had more flavor that way. And I'm so thankful for the picture she has of poverty. She's going to college to be a counselor, and she wants to use her artistic abilities to be an art therapist. And I don't know what her minor is going to be, but anyway, That's the story of my family.
Hello, my name is Amanda Howard, and I've been a part of CORE for 2 years now. And I would like to share with you why I believe in this program. I was living in extreme poverty from 2014 to 2020. During that time, I experienced homelessness and drug addiction that almost took my life. When I wasn't couch surfing, I was living on the streets, backyard sheds, or abandoned houses. When I would have a roof over my head, rarely all utilities were all on at once, and I never knew where my next meal was coming from. I was unemployable during most of that time, but if I did have a job, the money was never enough to last till the next paycheck. I was so ashamed of the way I was living. I felt like an outcast and always less than. I learned to keep my head down and not look people in the eyes. Countless times I was robbed of the little I had. I was preyed upon and taken advantage of by men who saw me as vulnerable and weak. I lived in fear from one day to the next, not knowing what that day would bring or if I would even make it through another one. I didn't really have dreams for my future, except for one, and I believe it had more to do with a deep faith than a dream. I remember holding on to a hope that one day I would feel safe in this world again. I wanted to get out of the cycle of hell I was in so I could focus on more important things in life, something that would bring glory to God. I didn't know how, but I knew God is faithful to keep his promises, and he said, "What I started in you, I will finish." Sorry.
Come on.
What I started in you, I will finish. And I held on to that for dear life. I'll never forget this quote that I've heard. When you're hanging on to a thread, make sure it's the thread of his garment. It was June 15th of 2020, and I almost lost my battle to addiction. I overdosed and was taken to a Wichita hospital. 5 days later, I went to live in an Oxford house. And after getting clean, I went to work picking up the pieces of the wreckage that was left in my life. Getting clean was the first step, but I assure you it didn't fix all of my problems. So I continued to pray, and he continued to lead me. It was in October of 2020. My mom asked me to go check out this CORE thing with her, so I went. And I continued to show up week after week. That December, a job as the resource coordinator came open. I had to overcome fear, and I stepped out of the box I had put myself in for so long, and I filled out that application. I'll never forget the feeling I had when I got the call back for a second interview. Going to those weekly CORE meetings was more to me than just learning a curriculum. It was about building relationships and confidence and activating a voice within myself. I felt seen and heard, and I had the sense of belonging to a community who cared. Looking back on these things, I know this was essential to my growth. It's been 2 years now. Today, I live in a peaceful, safe environment. Today, I get to have dreams and goals. I get to rent a beautiful 3-bedroom home with my fiance, and I don't worry where our next meal is coming from or if the bills will be paid. We have a daughter who is turning 1 in November, and I get to plan things like her birthday party. She doesn't live in chaos. She is safe and happy, and she is thriving, and so am I. Today I get to live in the moment and look towards the future. I am grateful for the CORE community program, giving me knowledge and direction to help put my life back together. But I have to tell you, it was Jesus Christ who was there with me in the fire and has given me a testimony. And all glory goes to God, for I know he is working and moving mountains